I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts. A very unusual video popped up on social media this week. We're going to have a little listen to it. This is Keith Byrne, a man suspected of murdering his girlfriend in a Spanish hotel.
Hey Rob, send this to everyone, will you? I love you all so much, so much. I love you. I'm okay. I'm safe. Going to school, fucking learning Spanish, going to the gym, swimming, playing football. A1. I'm fucking A1. I'm in a low security unit. There's no violence here, nothing like that. It's not allowed, or else you get fucked out. All the prisoners are on the sus. They don't want anyone at the bars because it fucks them all up. So it's A1. So I worry about it like that. Obviously, now I didn't do it because I found the girl dead. I love you all very much, and just keep this video if you ever want to watch it. I love you, right? All my heart. Mwah. See you all soon.
Now, where did that video emerge from, and how in the name of God does a guy in prison in Spain release a video of a selfie of himself like that?
Well, I don't know exactly what is the context in the Spanish prison. He's in a low security unit. Obviously, the system in Spain is very different to the system we have in Ireland, as we've spoken about this before. But the basic situation is Keith Byrne, who's got an address in Dunleer in County Meath, but is originally from the north side of Dublin. He's been held in connection with the death of Kirsty Ward. But in Spain, very different than Ireland, somebody can be held. They're nominated as a person of interest effectively in a case, but they're not charged as they will be as there will be in Ireland. It's a very different thing. So he's being held in this low security prison in Spain. I'm totally unaware as if they're allowed to have mobile phones. They're certainly, like in all prisons, I'm sure they're allowed access to their families. But this is recorded in his prison cell, effectively. And he opens the video by saying, "Can you share this with everybody you know?" Basically, his family and friends. And obviously then he proceeds in the video. It's about a minute long in total. He describes he describes being in prison, saying it's fine, there's no violence in there. He's playing football, he's learning Spanish. All the prisoners know the sus, it's fine. He sends messages to his family. And then he says, in connection with the death of Kirsty Ward, that obviously, I didn't do it. And that he found who he describes as, I found that girl dead.
Mm-hmm. Some hours after. She was obviously dead a few hours or something, he says.
That's exactly what he says. Yeah. Now, obviously, it was Kirsty Ward was found dead in the Hotel Magnolia in Salou on the 2nd of January.
Now, was Kirsty Ward on holidays with Keith Byrne? Were they in a relationship?
Yeah, that's as far as we are aware.
Yeah.
They were in a relationship, in not a long-term relationship, had been together for a short period of time. She's a mother of one from Dundrum.
That's in South Dublin.
In South Dublin. They hadn't seemed to have been in a long-term relationship. They went over there on holidays together. She was obviously found, the police are treating it as a homicide or as a murder. She died a violent death, not to get into the specifics of it. Very, very tragic. We've had a lot of contact from people who knew her just on a casual basis, universally describing her as in such glowing terms, beautiful person, very attractive young woman, great mother, really.
Now, the child wasn't with her.
The child was not with her.
They were there together on their own.
Yeah.
But not to get into it, but she died a violent death. The reports are that she had been strangled. Is that something that's contested by
No, I don't know. I don't believe it's contested.
Right.
It's just, again, it's the system of how these things are reported. Because there's no, in Ireland, obviously, if somebody is to be held in connection with a murder investigation, they can be arrested, but ultimately they have to be charged or released. At the point at which they're charged, the Gardaí will bring them to court and describe in very general terms what they're charged with. Because in Spain, somebody can be held as a suspect, there was a hearing. It was a private hearing that the media were not allowed to attend. So the details of the case are not explained. This is what we believe. This has been what's reported, that she died of violent death, due to strangulation, has been widely reported. Just obviously the system is different. So
from my knowledge of it, the police investigate a crime, any crime, be it a murder or, a drug crime or whatever. They gather their information and they hand the investigation over to the magistrate, to the judge, and the judge proceeds to then investigate.
Yeah.
So the judge is in a position that they can quiz suspects, people of interest. They can bring in, they can quiz the police.
Yeah, and witnesses.
And witnesses and stuff. So the magistrate essentially takes over the investigation.
Yeah.
And that can go on for a long time. It is, it has been criticised that some people are in custody for a long time before any decision is made about the case. It's a different system. It is what it is. But clearly the video was purposely taken, and it was, the point of doing it was for it to be shared.
The point of it says it in the opening of the video that, requesting it is shared widely. Obviously he's
confident looking in the video, I have to say, Mr. Byrne.
Yeah, he does look confident. He looks confident and he looks clear-headed.
Yeah.
And, doesn't look particularly stressed out. Though no doubt it's a stressful situation. We don't, obviously Keith Byrne has not, what we know of him, he's been involved in very minor criminal cases. That's the only cases on record. One of those was involved in a very sort of low-level petty crime. One of his co-accused in that case was Caelan Smith, who obviously went on to many, many years later, and there's no real belief that they remained in contact. But many years later, obviously, Caelan Smith would be convicted in connection with the attempted murder of Mago Gately as part of the feud. There's no suggestion that Keith Byrne is involved in anything like that. That's the guys, I think they were both, 19, 20 years old at the time or something around then.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, that was his only time that he's been in the public before.
So the murder happened on July 2nd, Sunday, and the body of Kirsty Ward was found in the Magnolia Hotel at 9:30 p.m. that night. Is her body still in Spain?
Well, there hasn't been a funeral service yet. Again, how these things operate may be slightly different. Obviously, there'll be post-mortem investigations and that type of stuff, but there hasn't been a public funeral. The family have appealed for privacy, and that's the reality. They're a grieving family. But we have received a lot of messages just about her, and people really, have been very devastated about it, and seems to be one of those, she seems to have been a wonderful sort of mother, and
it's horrendous.
Much, so it's very, it is.
Going on holidays, and then, the shock for a family to get a phone call.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that,
it's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And obviously then as well, there's the fact that something happens in a foreign country, and just that people want to know and can't find out what has happened, and all of that. Though I know a Garda liaison officer has been with the family.
It just adds layers, I'm sure, to the trauma as well, and even just having to fly over there and negotiate all that, and airports and the public of it. Tragedy at home is hard enough, even when you can lock yourself away in your own house. And obviously then her child.
Yeah.
What age is the child,
Don't know, not to get... Yeah. But look, it's...
you'd be trying to protect the child from stuff on the news and from whatever else. You can totally understand that as well. How do you break these things to kids? I just don't know.
No, it's terrible. Just terrible for the family.
Yeah, no,
and,
it's layers
seems a bright and
people affected by it, whatever the outcome is. But anyway, obviously we'll be following this story as it continues. I noticed that during the course of his video selfie that Mr. Byrne says that the truth will come out and that the newspapers will eat their words. So we'll wait and see what comes of this case going forward. Staying on Spain though, like we go back, of course, as always, to our Kinahan organisation, because they were so embedded down there on the Costa del Sol for so long. And we've spoken before about how in 2016, when Daniel and Christopher Kinahan left the Costa and headed for Dubai, they didn't pick up all their goods and chattels and go. They kind of went and left behind quite a lot of the Kinahan organisation.
Yeah.
And last year, when Johnny Morrissey was arrested in a big operation, you could clearly see that a lot of what they left behind was their money laundering end of their organisation. We know that they always had been purchasing properties down around the Costa. They owned themselves quite a number of properties around Estepona, around Marbella, around Puerto Banús, all the sort of the high-end locations actually, and up in the hills of Benahavas. They're all the pretty expensive parts of that neck of the woods. But last May, unknowns to us, there was as part of the Johnny Morrissey larger, wider investigation and probe, there was an apartment raided by the police in Spain, and an absolute massive cache of weapons were discovered. This news has only been sort of released in recent weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal amount. I'm actually just going to read out some of what was found. I mean, they described them as weapons of war in the Spanish media. So the haul consisted of 30 pistols, 8 submachine guns, 12 shotguns, 2 revolvers, 15 silencers, 8 hacksaws and 30 balaclavas, as well as tracking devices and ammunitions. And all of the guns had the serial numbers erased, which basically means they're scraped off with a machine so they can't be traced. So, I mean, it's an incredible, an incredible weapon stash, I mean, this is so. Obviously, it happened a year ago. It comes out this week.
They're calling it Operation Rambo.
Rambo, yeah. And so it seems how it was discovered was these weapons were left in this apartment, that obviously something had spooked the people who had stored them there, because they stopped paying the rent, stopped paying the utility bills. That ultimately led somebody to check on the apartment, and they never came back for the guns, basically, which seems to have been a big surprise to Spanish police. Obviously, the people who had left the guns there became paranoid and thought we're going to be under surveillance, which is something that happens quite a lot. If a drug shipment comes into Ireland, it'll sit in the port, or the police will know it's there, and they wait for somebody to come along and collect it and then kick into action, But
a drug shipment is going to tell you very little other than where it originated from, because often the Sinaloa cartel or whoever they're purchasing from will put their stamps on the drugs, or they'll have a particular stamp for a particular grouping. Wasn't Peter Fatso Mitchell in Wales? Didn't he have
the Avengers?
Was on his stuff. So presumably that's all very funny when it's all working for them, but not so funny when it's nabbed. But like guns, despite the fact that the serial numbers may have been erased from those guns, their ballistics is quite an important science, and a gun barrel can tell a lot. So if a victim, for example, has been, there could be an unsolved murder case, gangland murder case around the Costa, that could now be linked to some of those guns, because you don't need the serial number on them in order to match them to unsolved cases. So it's an extraordinary thing to leave behind.
Yeah.
No matter how paranoid maybe you got or how quickly you needed to move, it's an extraordinary amount of weapons to keep in an apartment.
Yeah.
And from my knowledge of organised crime and gangland or whatever, which is definitely, I'm not claiming to be an absolute expert on it, but from people I would talk to, there's one of those sort of rules that you don't keep your weapons inside your house.
No.
And you certainly don't keep them in a rental apartment that could have, an apartment in particular, where there's probably CCTV, there's probably key cards going in and out the gates of it. This is a strange story.
It is a strange story.
It's not all as it seems, I imagine.
No, and I mean, it's obviously it's in the Spanish newspapers, and they are very clearly linking them to the Kinahan cartel.
Yeah.
I mean, openly and explicitly, not necessarily in the formal police statements, but in very detailed ways in the leading Spanish newspapers, the very respectable and the broadsheet
like
types,
ourselves.
Just like ourselves, exactly.
Spanish
but I
version
mean,
of
they're
us.
saying, so what they're actually saying is that there's a DNA trace of a senior Kinahan cartel member has been found on some of the weapons. That's what's printed. It's printed through a source,
And we know that the Irish Gardaí haven't been formally informed of the actual links. They don't know any more other than what they're probably reading at the moment and hearing themselves.
No, so I mean, exactly, and this is what is being said, and it's also being linked in a general way to the investigation into Johnny Mamercy. Now, it could be that there's the DNA profile is of a UK citizen, because obviously UK citizens, particularly in that part of Spain, would have been very senior people within the Kinahan cartel, or it may be that this hasn't gone back or it's not confirmed. But it's certainly been linked to the Kinahan cartel, and it's, just even the scale of it shows that it's a proper, this is a serious organised crime.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, that's the amazing amount of weapons. I think it's probably like one of the biggest. It is the biggest seizure they've had in Spain.
They said that. I think they said that, and it's.
I mean, this is bigger than what was found in Bomber's stash in Green Oak.
Green Oak, yeah. So I mean, it's something on that scale. I mean, whether these guns were moved from somewhere else and ended up in an apartment.
In the apartment. I mean, that, like, you see, I suppose whenever we're operating on what we're garnering from people we'd respect in the media in Spain for getting stuff right, okay? So we know definitely that there's a link to the Kinahan organisation, that's some DNA. But the Kinahan organisation, headed, of course, by Daniel Kinahan, is a very peculiar grouping that do very peculiar things. And we know that they are under a huge amount of stress and threat, really, out in Dubai.
Yeah.
Control is slipping away. They're aware they're going to be lifted at some point. There's massive paranoia, and there has been for a long time, about keeping people loyal.
Yeah.
And you'd wonder, with this kind of a thing, has it not been perhaps the situation created by somebody within the Kinahan organisation? They'd be perfectly capable of that.
Yeah. I mean, they're remember as well that they're not necessarily a united, happy family.
No.
In terms of there's multiple factions, even within the Irish wing of the Kinahan cartel. There's these multiple factions that can rival each other while they're all put under this broad umbrella. So, I mean, no doubt that's the same in Spain. And there's certainly a lot of there's the UK arm of the people that were being fed by the Kinahan cartel. They're certainly strong within in that part of Spain.
I mean, look, that's just, I'm just speculating there. I'm just saying it is. I think that grouping, and with Daniel Kinahan at the head, is capable of anything.
Yeah,
and it's capable of creating extreme circumstances to keep people loyal, or to remind people that, So what we know is that there was two. And the only information I have is that two foreign guys were living in the apartments. They weren't Irish, they weren't English.
Yeah.
I don't know what nationality they were, but that they were living in the apartment and they have gone missing. But that there's DNA on some of the weapons, and that the weapons were discovered because they were abandoned, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we're saying it's around the time of the Johnny Morrissey arrest, as opposed to being one of the raids.
No, certainly not, no.
So the discovery was made because the place was literally left abandoned and bills weren't paid.
Yeah.
Very strange.
Very strange. I mean, even in the Spanish papers, they're describing not just the danger of having these weapons on the streets, but also the huge financial cost of them. I think they say one of these pistols is worth 500. It's worth. I can't even remember the figure they're putting out, but they're saying it's so much harder to get, so much more expensive than big blocks of drugs,
See, the financial to them is nothing.
Yeah.
They are just billionaires. They don't give a shit if something is 1,000, 5,000 quid. It's not like us. But I think with weapons, the biggest risk, the biggest sort of fear with a weapon is that it can be linked to a murder, because you can even link a weapon to a murder that happened, 20, 30 years ago from the gun, because all guns apparently are nearly have their own fingerprint in the ballistics of them, in the barrel of them. So you could imagine that people out there who worked perhaps for the Kinahan organisation over the years, and they did carry out a lot of murders. That's how they...
And in Spain, a lot that aren't always linked to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I know of cases, certainly I've been told of murders that they committed that, certainly they aren't even almost officially suspected of.
Or even are officially murders. There's missing people.
Exactly, missing people. And you hear that all the time from the ether, from the sort of the underworld about, all these sort of killings that they are believed to have been connected with. So they didn't carry them out themselves. Daniel Kinahan didn't pick up a gun and go out and do that himself. Other people did it for them. They were paid to do it for them. There was hit teams at times brought in from Ireland to do it for them.
Yeah.
So this stash of weapons being caught, if this is a Kinahan stash, if this is something that has been used over the decades of the Kinahan's operations in Spain, there could be a lot of people caught up in investigations around this. I mean, this could be a fall of a house of cards for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That could be something that would keep people loyal.
Yeah.
The fear of being linked to...
Yeah. It's interesting, though, it hasn't made its way back to Ireland, this information, as far as we know, and as far as
it hasn't made it officially back through the to the channels. And so, but then you see there is cooperation, but at times maybe they don't, well, I think maybe they're still trying to smoke out some information. Or
I think intelligence is probably shared a bit less than the factual when something is nailed down. And look, more will be seen, no doubt about it anyway.
I mean, do you remember when Gilligan was arrested that time? The Spanish were very sure that they'd got the gun perhaps that had been used to kill Veronica Guerin, and I know the Irish police here just couldn't connect the dots with that. They didn't believe that Gilligan would have kept that so close by.
Yeah.
So, criminal gangs are usually very... they don't usually hang on to guns like that have been used in previous...
No, I mean...
because they can be linked to them. They will have them destroyed and or buried or whatever. So anyway, look, we'll...
Yeah. Well, do you want to...
We'll be talking about this again. I know we will. And we'll be going, oh my God, we knew there was something really weird with that.
Well, talking about something that I said we'd never be talking about again. What a great segue into the fact that...
What?
We are again talking about the Regency.
Oh, Jonathan Dowdall.
Yes.
He's just not having much luck, is he?
No. Well, he's just failed in his appeal against his sentence.
Sorry, I thought you were going to stop on failed.
well.
He's just failed.
It's
You're going to feel sorry for this guy. Go on. What's happened? No, I'm not. But go on. What's happened?
So obviously he'd appealed. He'd been sentenced for his role in the Regency, basically. He'd appealed the severity of the sentence.
4 years.
4 years, which kind of, I think most people would have gone for, 4 years for, obviously not carrying out a murder, but involvement in a conspiracy around arranging that murder. 4 years would have seemed like quite a short sentence, particularly for somebody with Jonathan Dowdall's criminal history, given the fact that he'd spent a lengthy prison sentence. He was just completing a lengthy prison sentence in recent times for torturing an innocent man over a supposed motorbike deal. But Jonathan Dowdall is nothing but not argumentative and, self-regarding, and he obviously had brought this appeal, but it was rejected. It's been rejected in the appeals court. They had described it at the time to say, if anything, it appeared to be quite lenient. And in their judgment today, the judges said they would not demur from that observation. In our view, it has to be seen as lenient, indeed very lenient, the sentence. And if they had any doubts, it would have been that it was too lenient, and in fact could have been less lenient, basically. So it was a very clear and clear rejection of it.
Yeah.
And so it effectively means Jonathan Dowdall, I mean, I don't know what the months are counting down to, but he's another, year or so, whatever it is exactly, to spend before going into the witness protection program and beginning his new life abroad. And that's probably his last appeal. I suppose he could further bring it to.
He's a chancer, isn't he?
He's a chancer, and I think he's also one of these people, even when...
He works from though, sometimes. Those...
Well, it probably has...
chancers that, if you chance your arm with everything.
Well, it probably has...
What do you call those men that...
Go on.
pester women? What do you call them?
Well, that's been not my area of speciality. I don't know.
Carpet bombers.
Carpet bombers, yeah. Well, I think the thing about Jonathan Dowdall is...
Explain.
Well, a carpet bomber would be... it's a term, doesn't it, from the Vietnam War, where the Americans were looking for the Viet Cong in the jungle, and they'd hear they're up around there somewhere, but instead of knowing where they were, they just carpet bomb miles and miles of jungle through Vietnam, and they only have to get lucky once.
Yeah. They get their target. So
Jonathan Dowdall...
We translate that firstly to men on the hunt for women.
Yes.
And the carpet bomber is somebody who goes out there and chats up every woman in the room.
Yeah. And
he only has to get...
Yeah, so if you chat up 200 women and you get lucky once, you're still the winner.
Yeah.
Even if you don't take into account...
rejection doesn't bother them.
199 rejections are nothing.
No,
they just
go again. They go for the next one.
Yeah.
So translate that now next to Jonathan Dowdall being a chancer. He chances his arm at every single thing, at every turn.
Yeah.
And he'll win sometimes.
And inarguably, he has won. He's going to set off in his new life in a period of time. But at every level, he's resisted taking responsibility and appeal to the courts.
Another person would have put their head down, sucked up that sentence, did it, and just hoped to get the hell away.
But instead, Jonathan Dowdall, if you look through all of his, even to the case involving the waterboarding, he appealed it in small bits, big bits. Within the trial, he had a trial within a trial.
Yes.
When he was charged with murder in connection with the Regency murder, he appealed he appealed it before it even came to court. He brought appeals against the Special Criminal Court. So he's just continued on doing it. Carpet bombing, I suppose, his innocence. And
I love that. And all the while we have heard nout of Jerry Hutch. He's gone on an extended holiday or something? Perhaps?
Yeah, unlikely to be. It doesn't seem to be in the country by all accounts.
No, there hasn't been a word of him.
No.
He's probably out there enjoying the sun, the summer, his freedom.
Yeah.
And no doubt he will come back to Dublin, but we don't know what otherwise he's doing. And there's been very little rumblings. I mean, nobody's ever going to say that Kinahan Hutch feud has ended. I don't think it'll ever end. But there has been a long period of time, thankfully, that there hasn't been any attempted murders or any successful murders, as they would call it.
Well, if you look at it in terms of who was driving the feud, particularly in the early days, from the Kinahan side in particular, it was very much Thomas Bomber Kavanagh and Daniel Kinahan. Thomas Bomber Kavanagh is obviously locked up, his organisation dismantled. Keith Byrne would have also been somebody who was driving
any word of
some
him.
of that. He's remains on remand in
Mallorca.
Well, I don't know about if it's in Mallorca, but certainly in a Spanish prison.
And we just need to find out when the next hearing is.
I mean, again, it's soon? Well, there would be an extradition hearing. It depends if
that'll happen in Madrid, I believe.
That'll happen in Madrid. It depends. I haven't received the date. Again, these hearings are not equivalent to Ireland, where they're kind of open court hearings and listed. it's going to be different. But that will be the big point. And again, because he's being extradited to the UK as a EU citizen, there might be more procedural avenues for him to challenge than if the UK had remained within the EU, where it's really a rubber stamping exercise, isn't it? The extradition, if you're under a EU arrest warrant. Now, there seems to be a very strong treaty and between the EU and the UK about criminal matters that hasn't suffered any challenges as of this moment. But that will certainly be the next point of call, and that. If you remember many years ago, these extradition hearings were really, really complicated. And, you know, we'll all remember them from when we were growing up, and to do it between the north and down here, like the extradition of suspected terrorists could go on for years and years and years. You know, all of that system has been really modernized by the EU, that it tends to be very, very quick. So you would expect that to happen pretty soon, I would think. Yeah. You know, possibly this year.
Yeah. See, all of this will again start coming together.
Yeah.
It's like pieces of a jigsaw.
Yeah.
All of it happening in various parts of the world, all moving pieces. And obviously Dubai is sitting there as well, ready to happen at any point. But everything starts coming together and you can connect. And that story in Spain of those weapons, I know, is going to come back around again.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we will be having a conversation going, imagine that's what was going on.
There was an interesting little story we picked up from the Dutch media this week about Rafael Imperiale, the mafia guy who'd been an associate of the Kinahans. He had been asked to testify El Rico had been appealing his sentence. He'd been asked to testify. I think he was allowed to turn it down on this occasion. But again, while he turned it down, and it was slightly confusing because you're looking at it through Google Translate, but basically he has still made a commitment to give evidence in trials of people that he has relevant knowledge of in the Netherlands. So that was re-established again.
You see, in the El Rico case, he was extradited from Santiago in Chile. He was a partner of Ridwan Taghi.
Yeah,
I can never work out who is in charge or who isn't.
Well, I think he was in charge, El Rico, of the export business, because he was bringing.
He had the contacts in Chile. He was known as the most dangerous Chilean in the world.
But he was
Peru,
really
Peru.
The wholesaler of the cocaine. And that, you know, Taghi and the other, they were really, once it landed in Europe, they were the distributors of it to a degree. But they obviously had people over there in Peru and Chile working with El Rico.
So he has been tried before the courts in the Netherlands, and evidence has been used of EncroChat phone hack stuff. He has not been convicted of murder. He's been convicted of money laundering
and drug trafficking,
organised crime offences.
Yeah.
But the investigation is still ongoing into whether or not he can be linked to a number of gangland murders that Ridwan Taghi is facing the charges for, and other ones, I believe. And that has been left open, that investigation, on the basis that further information may come before the courts, or further information may come to the investigators. So presumably that's what Rafael Imperiale's evidence would be wanted for.
Yeah.
Because as such, the organised crime element and the money laundering element of El Rico is finished with.
Yeah.
You can't go back to the pot on that. So it's to get him on further, heavier charges, which would end up getting him a longer sentence, is really what that's about.
And you see it in that report that that commitment remains, that he will give evidence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's obviously in custody in Italy. But it just shows you that.
Does it mean he won't go to the Netherlands to give evidence? Can he give it remotely? Or
I really don't know, but it just shows you there is that commitment there, and that's working across Europe and across these borders. That his part of his deal basically with the Italian officials.
I wanted to talk to you about Rafael Imperiale, but we're not going to do it now because I've interviewed a journalist in Italy called Floriana Bulfin, and she's written a book called Macro Mafia, or anyway, sorry, Floriana, I will get the right name of it, because she very kindly sent me a copy of the book. It's in Italian. I don't have Italian.
No.
She has done an interview with me. We just did a Q&A. I gave her some questions so she could prepare with the language difficulties. But what we'll do is we'll gather that. I've asked her, she's very interesting. She's the kind of the absolute kind of authority on organised crime in Italy. She's living under threat herself. But she has delved in and has huge access to the story around Raphael Imperiale and what he's doing now. I've spoken to her about Daniel Kinahan, about the significance of the relationship with her and with him and Imperiale and the others. And we'll maybe sit down, we'll go through her interview and then we'll discuss it and her book afterwards. But we'll do that next week.
Sounds good.
It's I just don't have it properly edited yet. So
okay, sounds good.
We'll do that. So right, we'll come back to that next week.
Okay.
Another little dose of organised crime for the listeners, yeah?
Yes.
Anything else you'd like to...
No fashion, no attacks on my fashion today, no?
No, we're just in matching black,
Yeah.
which was a good kind of a vibe, was it?
It was a kind of a, gothic...
And then you did say to me before we came on, is my T-shirt okay? Did you mean...
Well, I meant respectable.
general?
I wasn't looking... It isn't respectable enough, was it?
Yeah, have I...
Of course, I wasn't... What?
Are you lacking in confidence now because I've been...
Well, I don't know if I was always lacking in confidence and you've just brought it to the fore. Could be, but certainly you've not been good for myself.
I'll have to sort of...
Nicola.
I'll have to read up on how to positively,
Yeah, it wouldn't
reaffirm.
You will have to read up on it because it doesn't come naturally.
Anyway, right. Well, look, we'll keep an eye on you next week and see what you have on you.
Yeah, some positive affirmations for me.
Exactly. All right.
Thank you, Nicola.
Good weekend.